Hello and welcome everyone to our first Brands on Fire LinkedIn Live. We did a Marketers on Fire last month with former Dickies CMO Sarah Crockett, and this is our first Brands in the Brands on Fire series. I'm Kaylee Holtgren, Content Director for Chief Marketer and PR News, and I'm joined by Taydra Mitchell-Jackson, CMO at SheaMoisture. Welcome, Taydra.
Thank you, Kaylee. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk with Taydra today about SheaMoisture's recent Black Men Love video series and campaign, some purpose-driven marketing tactics, the success of its men's product business, and much more. First, a quick word about our Brands on Fire and Marketers on Fire series, in case you're not familiar. Chief Marketers started our monthly Brands on Fire and Marketers on Fire a few years ago, and the profiles highlight the brands and people that are shaping, pushing, and disrupting the industry. These are editorial features, so you can find them on chiefmarketer.com, including Taydra's full profile. And we decided to do them live as additional content for our readers. So a quick note about Q&A. There, if you feel like asking Taydra any questions, feel free to type them in on LinkedIn, and if we have time, we'll get to them. So let's get started. Taydra, let's start talking a little bit about the Black Men Love campaign. Can you share what it's about and the inspiration for it?
Absolutely. First, again, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here with Kaylee and Brands on Fire. Love the series and the work that you're doing. So just congratulations and kudos to providing a platform for brands and marketers to come in and really share their expertise and their heart and their passion. So thank you so much for that. As we think about the Black Men Love campaign, we think about SheaMoisture and who we are and what we serve, what we mean and who we serve. And we're a brand that serves the underserved, overserves the underserved. And when we think about the concept of being overserved, there's probably no population or group of people that is more underserved when it comes to media and demonstrations of love than Black men. And there have been a couple of different narratives that we really have been following that brought us to the inspiration for this campaign. First, there tends to be, if you think about the historical narrative around Black men, there tends to be sometimes negative stereotypes, historical stereotypes that kind of show up in media and really show Black men in a very one-dimensional, from a one-dimensional point of view. And we really think that it's time to help proliferate a new narrative. At the same time, we're also hearing men tell a different story from their perspective. And really post-COVID, really seeing Black men in particular talk much more about self-care, much more about mental health and mental well-being, and being comfortable with even moving into a new narrative and kind of new descriptive. And so as we think about the combination of these two, the interface of these two, wanting to move away from these historical stereotypes and really seeing the narrative that men are giving themselves, we thought, what an opportune time for a brand like SheaMoisture Men to help really proliferate this new narrative and really showcase men through the lens of love. And so that's what the Black Men Love campaign is all about. It's about showcasing Black men through the lens of love and being able to showcase men in lights and in identities that we don't normally see in media as a way to really kind of give our own love letter to men and to give them their flowers while they can enjoy them.
The vignettes for the series are really moving. Can you talk a little bit about how you came up with those, and if you did consumer research or if it was from some of your cultural listening?
Yeah, so I think when we think about this campaign, a lot of it came from cultural listening. A lot of it came from partnering with men and people with incredible insight. So even though we have the ability to really stand as the brand and as a platform that can push this narrative forward, we're really just bringing to life the work that has been being done and the conversations that have been being had by men for a good period of time. And so our visionary behind the campaign is one of our brand managers, Shanice Piles, but we worked in partnership with a number of Black men, including at the time our head of creative, some of our senior strategists on the business, our producers, and our entire creative team. And so this was really the vision and the brainchild and the heart child, if you will, of men who have decided that it was time for us to push this new narrative forward. And so when you see these vignettes, which is a big part of our SheaMoisture Black Men Love campaign, there are a series of vignettes that really showcase men in this wonderful new light. You see men who are expressing and practicing self-healing. You see men who are showing their love to their daughters as single fathers. You see men who are showcasing and practicing mentorship, which is something that we've even seen in the national landscape. You see men who are teachers, and we've seen men in the national landscape that are showing love to their students. Their students are just so excited and so elated to come and to see them and to give them a hug every day. Those are the stories that we wanted to tell. Those are the narratives that we wanted to bring forward, and being able to do that in a very, very safe space to really ensure that we can showcase this redefinition of what Black male masculinity looks like. That it's not a one size fits all. It's not a homogenous view, and we're really excited that the campaign showcases men in these wonderful lights and with this new narrative.
Wonderful. So you're working with a number of partners on this. So how are they? What are those partners, and how are they significant from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, so when we think about this community and we think about the importance of being able to really bring forward culture, a big part of culture is about those conversations that are happening around the kitchen table, those conversations that are happening when no one is listening, but then the ability to amplify those discussions and really to bring them forward. And so we kicked off this campaign with giving men flowers outside of one of the most popular and one of the oldest standing Black barbershops in Harlem, and also in New York City. I'm sorry, in New York City, and then also in LA. But we did that as a way to really showcase this culture in terms of these safe spaces that men have created. The barbershop is probably one of the most safe spaces that men have had, but was also kind of historically that place where men would go and have these conversations that they couldn't have anywhere else. So it was almost like an informal therapist, right? But as these conversations are now becoming more formalized and men are leaning into mental health, we're now able to partner with organizations like Black Men Heal, which is a nonprofit organization that really works to ensure that we can make mental health and wellness resources available to men who may not have access. We're also working with Black Men Smile, which is an organization that creates really safe spaces for people to show up just as who they are. And then the Black Man Canon, I want to make sure that I get this right, is an organization that's dedicated to curating, creating, and amplifying positive stories of Black men and Black boys. So looking at mental health, looking at the ways that people show up and giving them safe spaces, and looking at this organization that really helps us with amplifying positive stories is a well-rounded and really solid partnership for this narrative that we are driving with the Show Black Men Love campaign.
Yeah, I loved the photos of the event with the flowers. That was that was really beautiful. Can you talk through that a little bit? Like, what did people do when they came in? What did attendees do?
Yeah, so this was when we talked about this campaign, and I love Shanice and the way that she talks about the stories that we need to tell, and this really being our love letter to Black men. We wanted an opportunity to do something that we could demonstrate. And when we talked even to men who participated in the event, basically we set up outside of a barbershop in Harlem and in a high traffic area in LA. And we handed men flowers, and the flowers were roses, white roses, and they had just a note on them that talked about SheaMoisture and giving them love. And it was so incredible because oftentimes men they're not associated and used to receiving flowers. And so people would first ask, well, how much does it cost? No, this is for you. And then the joy that would come across their faces just from that very, very small, but importantly and very significant gesture, kind of told us that we were definitely on the right track. And so it's interesting because we also had a chance to talk to some of the men that had received the flowers, and they said, you don't often associate receiving flowers as a Black man in a positive light. It tends to kind of be when you're not able to say thank you for the flowers that you've received. And so how significant is it that SheaMoisture shows up and gives us flowers while we can enjoy them? And so the entire campaign, though, is about giving men flowers. So we have affirmations and encouragement that you can find on our social feed. That's really about showcasing love and showcasing those point of affirmations. We have some events that will be coming up where men will be able to come together in these very safe spaces and have conversations one with another. We have the vignettes that you talked about as well, where people can really see the storylines that we're telling and can see themselves in a very, very different light. And all of this is intended to be an expression of being able to show men love. And we're encouraging people to join in the campaign, to find people that are in your circle, that are in your sphere, that you can showcase and demonstrate love to. It may be that you give them flowers literally. It may be that figuratively you think about how you give Black men in your life flowers. How do you reaffirm them? How do you encourage them? And how do you support them? So this becomes much more than a moment, but becomes a movement.
Yeah, I love how when we discussed this last time, you mentioned that it was much more than a moment, a movement. Could you talk about that a little bit, and where the passion from that originates?
I mean, I think we've talked a lot about when we think about the passion from the passion in terms of where this has come from. A lot of it comes from, as we've shared, the narratives that we have tended to hear. We think about some of the stories that show up in the media. I think about the young Black man that was in Michigan who was taking out the trash, and because he was, seen as he fit the description. An underage minor who's taking out the trash, doing something that's a very normal day-to-day activity, and he gets arrested. And some of that we know has to do with the color of his skin. We think about some of the stories that we've heard in the headlines even more recently. The man that was almost choked to death in the subway, and that people kind of stood around and watched, and there was no one who came to his aid, as he was being, as life was leaving him. George Floyd is such an incredible moment that the world got to watch, in terms of the treatment of Black men. So when we start to see these stories that are played out and the proliferation of these stories that are played out, we know, as we stand as women, Black women, but also as we stand as a brand that is committed to the well-being of Black men, we know that that's not the only story. Those aren't the only narratives, and that's not the only way that we want to see our men depicted. And so we are excited not about being able to be the hero in this narrative, but really being able to stand arm in arm with men and organizations that are already telling this narrative, and being able to use our platform to really amplify it, in a way that ultimately our goal is that we start to see different stories in the media. We start to see different stories when you see the way that men may be portrayed in movies. We start to see those different stories, and that people begin to operate very differently. We had the chance to, at CultureCon recently, we kicked off our CultureCon activation with a panel series, and we had a chance to talk with a couple of men and really hear their narrative and really hear their feedback. And one of the things that they hoped from this campaign is that people would just allow them to be. Just give us the permission and the space to be. Give us the permission and the space to express, and not necessarily to be vilified, as we work through those expressions. And so there is such an opportunity, I think, for us as a community, to join in, and really to show Black men love, but also as a brand, it really helps us as we think about how we build a universe and how we build a world where our consumers can show up and really be free to be themselves. And that's really what we aspire to do with this campaign.
Can you talk a little bit about the success of SheaMoisture's men's product business in the last couple of years? I know that it's grown a lot, and I wonder if you could tell people like what you attribute that success to.
Yeah. So again, SheaMoisture is really committed to overserving the needs of the underserved, and we really focus on some those communities that have not been served by what may be considered historically mainstream products, if you will. And a few years ago, The gentleman that leads our innovation for Shea, Obina KK, took the lead on really kind of looking at insights around men, what they needed for their skin, what Black men needed in particular, the role that moisture would play, the role that some of our cultural and historical and heritage ingredients would play, and reshaped, repackaged, and revitalized the SheaMoisture men's business. And we were able to relaunch it with really incredible success. And so in those first couple of years, the business tripled versus where we had been historically. And then we've continued to see success with our hair care business and with our beard and our beard business as well, in terms of really being able to drive those important solutions that understand the specific needs of men and melanin-rich skin, what they need for their hair, and some of those very unique insights that are so important in terms of being able to craft a SKU lineup and products that deliver against the needs. And so the feedback has been really, really strong. Last year, our beard balm won a beauty award in the industry, and so that was wonderful, exciting, and a nod to the strength of our R&D and the strength of our product innovators. And this campaign then helps to kind of really put a wonderful wrapping on the strength of our product collections by being able to bring forth this narrative that we not only show Black men love by the products that we make, but we show them love in terms of how we showcase them, and how we love on them, if you will, through these new narratives.
So what do you have anything that you're doing next with this particular campaign? And are you have new iterations? And if not, or in addition, what else are you doing with the brand? Anything coming down the pike?
Yeah, so as it relates to Black Men Love, there's so much that will be coming. And so we would ask you to continue to take a look at our social media, take a look at the website to see what's coming up. We have a couple of events that will be coming up in November where men will be able to participate in these kind of community events, these safe spaces where you're able to come together and have these conversations and talk about the things that are on their hearts and on their minds. So being able to talk about wellness, being able to talk about showing up for family, being able to talk about the challenges that they may be having from a career perspective, or whatever those important discussions may be. But really being able to, within these community events, create these safe spaces. So be on the lookout for. Make sure that you follow SheaMoisture at SheaMoisture, and be on the lookout for those. But as we think about this idea of overserving the underserved, one of the big parts of SheaMoisture, in terms of our mission, is around how we help close the racial equity wealth gap, and how we ensure that we are leveraging our power and our platform and our resources to do that. And so we do focus a lot on entrepreneurs. And we do focus a lot on making sure that we're giving back to entrepreneurs and giving back to the community. And so we launched recently our Next Black Millionaire program that we did in partnership with Target. There's a documentary that you can go take a look at right now on Roku. And we follow 3 entrepreneurs through their journey of getting to and building their business to millionaire status. They were each given a $100,000 grant by SheaMoisture. And you can see their journey in terms of the learning and the bumps and the bruises, and ultimately the triumphs. Those businesses are still in Target, and we're still asking you to support them. So Scotch Boys, which is a Jamaican-based hot sauce, Undefined Beauty, which is a plant-based and plant-powered beauty brand, and Cosmology, which is all about beauty tools that are very, very culturally insightful and culturally relevant. You can find them on Target.com. You can find them in some Target stores. So we ask you to continue the cycle. Like, we don't want these moments that we create to just be moments. We want them to be movements. So we ask you to continue the cycle by going to Target.com, going in the Target stores, supporting these businesses, and then supporting SheaMoisture, because as you support SheaMoisture, it allows us then to continue the cycle of pouring back into businesses like our 3 winners, and also pouring into these campaigns to really uplift our community of men.
Wonderful. So We talked a lot about the Black Men Love campaign, but I'm going to move on now to more general marketing topics because we have you here, and I'd love to hear a little
Yes.
bit about what you would recommend to people who are aspiring to the C-suite. So first of all, what's your best advice to those who want to land a position in the C-suite, who are looking to be a CMO? What would be the most important things that you would say to them?
Um, I think if you want to land in the C-suite, if you want to be a CMO, first of all, you have to have a love for marketing. You have to have a love for the business, like the thing that it is that you do or that you aspire to. And that might sound really, really fundamental, but there's so much that goes into showing up for these roles and these jobs, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you're building your own business and you want to be your own CMO, whether you want to be the CMO of a company like Shea, or you aspire, even to, to have larger aspirations. You have to have a love for what it is that you do, and it has to be a love for it in breadth and depth. So from a marketing perspective, if you're younger in your career in marketing, understand all the aspects of marketing. Marketing is such a broad term, and people get really excited about they get excited about the flash. They get excited about seeing the glamour. But there's a lot around analytics and data, and making really insightful decisions, and being able to understand numbers, and being able to understand what drives a business. What are those building blocks? And so I think, first of all, you have to have a love for that thing. If it's marketing, that's great. If it's a CEO, if it's a COO, you have to have a love for operations. The other thing I think, in terms of getting to the C-suite, is I think you have to be really comfortable with who you are. I think there are times when we think that an executive looks a certain way or shows up a certain way, and we may aspire to or attempt to show up in the way that we think we're supposed to. Um, but this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And part of running that race, in terms of it being a marathon, is there's a lot of energy that it takes to not be you. So don't spend your energy in not being you. Be who you are, and know and trust that who you are will definitely make room for you. It'll make room, in terms of the place that you aspire to be. And then I would say the other thing is, don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to take opportunities which may appear to be off the beaten path, because every experience that you have when you get to this level and to this seat, it serves you. And so the path is not a linear path. Don't be fearful of not walking a straight path, but take those opportunities which may at the time kind of seem um, like they may be giving you a set of different experiences, but embrace those different experiences, because it all works together, right, to create a base of knowledge and a base of expertise that serves you when you're leading people and you're leading teams, and you have to have breadth of thought. Those would be my encouragements to you.
That's excellent advice. One more question about general marketing. Are there any topics or trends that you think savvy marketers, modern marketers, should be paying close attention to right now? Any trends that are kind of on your mind? And that could be whatever, really, in any
Yeah.
topic.
Well, from a beauty perspective, there are huge trends across the board in terms of clean beauty, green beauty, eco-friendly, eco-conscious, but personalization. There is this hyper personalization that people are now wanting, in terms of their brands, their products, their services, their experiences. And you can see that through how stores are evolving. You can see it through, and there's also a huge desire and need for on demand, right? So you can see it through the explosion of direct to consumer services, and people being able to access beauty products through those services, but also just a continuous, very hyper personalization in terms of the solutions and offerings that they're looking for. So I think if you're in the beauty space, really understanding your audience, and understanding the nuances of your audience, because we are no longer crafting solutions for a homogenous group of people. We're crafting solutions insight by insight and person by person. The Black Men Love campaign is a great example of that, right? Very, very specific insights around what this Black men experience has been, and then crafting a campaign around that, which will look very different than it might look for another part of our audience. And so I think that's really important. I think the other thing that we can't ignore is AI, artificial intelligence, tech, like the role that that is now playing in the context of our lives, both as marketers kind of behind the scenes, but then also how are we using that to ensure that we can deliver against those hyper personalization trends, and how we're really meeting the needs of consumers. And consumers are very, very savvy in terms of how they're using these tools. And so we have to ensure that we're keeping up with them. I think we'd be remiss to not talk about there. And there's pros and cons. There's lots of controversy. But understanding it and being able to navigate it and being able to help leverage it, I think, for competitive advantage, but also really at the end of the day to drive delight, I think is going to be really critical for today and moving forward.
Fully agree on those two. My last question for you is just about yourself. Could you talk a little bit about how you got into marketing and your career, and just a little bit about how you got where you are today?
Sure. So I got into marketing. I came right out of grad school and started working for a Fortune 100 consumer goods manufacturer. Probably the best decision I made in terms of just establishing a really strong foundation in terms of marketing, general management, understanding the business, understanding the building blocks of like what it takes to put a brand together. Had the chance to work on brands that were existing, but also working on building new brands and new offering and new innovation, and really kind of got the bug both for new product development, but also at that time for ensuring that people that looked like me were represented in the brands and in the conversations that we were having. I say all the time that early in my career, I shared with my managers that I wanted to be able to work on products and brands that I could take to my mother and my grandmother and say, like, this is something that was created with you in mind. Because in my reality, when I started my career, that wasn't necessarily the case. As we fast forward so many years later, it really has become par for the course, although there is still so much work that we need to do. Because even when we think about the multicultural consumer, textured hair consumers, melanin rich consumers, 80% of those consumers still don't feel like beauty products are created for specifically for them. And so that kind of became also my passion point. And I carried that passion point throughout the next several companies that I would work with, and then even throughout an independent consulting stint where I was consulting with companies and helping them transition from direct to consumer into mass retail. And now, as I sit here at SheaMoisture, it really is the culmination of all the things that are so important to me: over serving that underserved consumer, really being able to build business and build women as a part of that, and making sure that we are doing good and being able to give back to the community. And so really excited that my journey has been able to lead me here, and really, really also excited about what's next.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that, Taydra. I think that's a great place to end today, about all the time we have. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Kaylee. This was really, really exciting, despite all of our technical difficulties, which no one else can see.
I know, not so bad.
But we made it.
Okay.
We made it. So thank you again.
That's good. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that was listening. And we're going to post this. It's going to live on LinkedIn, so anyone can go back for on demand. But thank you very much. And we'll see you all for the next one. Bye-bye.